Hello everyone and welcome to another DI concept analysis, a series of videos where I discuss about upcoming dinosaur concept arts released for Evrima. Today we will explore Quetzalcoatlus, its real-life counterpart, how it was in Legacy and how it's going to be in the future. So without further ado, sit back and enjoy the video. Quetzalcoatlus northropi, or feathered serpent god lizard, was a large pterosaur from the late Cretaceous 67 million years ago, ruling the skies of what is now North America. Pterosaurs were an order of ancient flying reptiles that dominated everything above ground throughout the Mesozoic, and Quetz was the biggest of them all, and possessed the largest wings of any flying animal. With an extraordinary wingspan as large as 52 feet, and reaching up to 20 feet in height, this giant flyer was just as big as a private airplane. Or a giraffe with wings, whatever you prefer the most. Quetz belonged to the Arsdacidae family, one of the last members of the pterosaur order during the late Cretaceous, known for their elongated legs and extremely long necks, as well as possessing oversized heads with spear-like jaws. Despite being a large animal, Quetzal and their relatives were surprisingly good flyers, estimated to have a cruising speed of 130 km per hour and having a global flight range of 13,000 km. Impressive statistics, especially for something so big. The secret for such feats was inside their bone structure. Exceptionally thin bones filled with small air pockets made this giant bird extraordinarily light, with a mere 250 kilograms. That's less than 21% of modern giraffe's weight. Unlike many other pterosaurs, Quetzalcoatlus's anatomy was too large to be able to skim due to excessive drag in low-altitude flights, as well as not possessing a beak/jaw suited for such activity, and thus their diet didn't contain any fish whatsoever, being an exclusive terrestrial stalker, feeding off small vertebrates or even small hatchlings if given the opportunity. Now this would be the time that I would talk about Quetz as a playable in the Isle and how it functioned. However, I sadly can't because they were available in Legacy for a very short period of time, most of which the creature wasn't even fully functional, so there's not really much to talk about due to how little time we had access to it. So instead I will simply move on to the concept art straight away. There's some interesting information here, but first let's analyze the most important aspect of Quetz's playstyle in Evrima. Unlike their real-life counterpart, our giant flying reptiles will be able to actively hunt small tier dinosaurs as big as Gallimimus. The latter specially shows Quetz piercing one of the Gallis's body, presumably killing it instantly and flying off immediately after. This means that they can carry relatively heavy bodies into the air. This may indicate something important. I will explain it later. Other sides of them hunting small prey are these two illustrations showcasing both Baby and Ava. Ava especially is an interesting case since we know from its concept art that they will possibly have a unique mechanic related to burrows, where Avas can place their heads in order to block burrow entrances, a mechanic that seems to be ignored by Quetz. Another speculation is that Quetz have a much higher reach inside burrows, able to snatch small dinosaurs from places that other raiders cannot. Unsurprisingly, Quetzals will be the new king of the skies, with predators also being on the menu. This may also mean that pterodons will need to place their nests with Quetzals in mind, meaning that their nest locations may vary drastically. What is not on the menu, however, are Rexes. Being dozens of times heavier than them, Tyrannosauruses are no match for these flying giraffes as shown here, requiring the need to place their meals in places out of reach, meaning that flat land is still dangerous for them, despite being apexes. Another very interesting aspect is the Quetzalcoatlus parent protecting their offspring on land. This heavily implies that young Quetzals, unlike their small counterparts, cannot fly after birth. This would create a huge difficulty barrier for Quetz players, being extremely vulnerable during the time period they are unable to take flight. But by far the most intriguing portion of this entire concept art is this. This is not a strain, not a normal Quetzal. This is something else. The little lore that we know about the isle is that all dinosaurs in this island were man-made for a non-disclosed purpose. We also know that strains exist and are experiments made by human scientists. However, the use of actual dinosaur players was never mentioned apart from tribals, which is an entirely different entity. This is not a playable dinosaur. If we compare it to others, we can see that there are some significant changes. My theory is that this is a dead Quetz, which got cybernetic enhancements and, quote-unquote, revived for human use. What purpose would it serve for human players? We don't know. How can this influence Quetz players? We don't know either. But the sudden appearance of this new type of creature is clearly a hint of something new that is yet to come. Flying characters are always extremely hard to balance on a multiplayer scenario. The huge maneuverability advantage that it provides very often is source of frustration. With Pterodon, that was mainly avoided by making it basically harmless for most people, but that was made in the expense of its combat capabilities. Fortunately, Pterodon was made to be a scavenger from the get-go, so that didn't affect it when it comes to its playstyle. However, with Quetz, it's a different story. We do know that they will still be vulnerable to other carnivores like the T-Rex, and that should extend to all other apexes. However, we don't know the outcome of a confrontation between Quetzal and a mid-tier dinosaur like Elo, Alberto or Suco. We also don't know what can happen to other small tiers, since we saw one of them being one-shotted during a dive. Does that mean that all small tiers will be just as vulnerable? How big of a prey item can Quetzals carry? Are mid-tiers like Dibble, Maggie and Maya in danger as well? We also need to keep in mind that they chose Galley specifically to showcase this, one of the fastest dinosaurs in the entire game. So if there's a possibility that our big birds can reach enough speed to simply yoink a Gallimimus, how will slower dinosaurs of the same size be able to defend themselves? A solution presented in the concept was making their growth much harder by making younglings unable to fly, which in consequence will naturally reduce the amount of adult specimens at any given time. However, that doesn't necessarily fixes the issue, it only makes it less predominant. Besides, there's still a problem there. Remember when I said that them being able to carry large quantities of food was relevant? If that's the case, assuming that they will be able to stay airborne for large amounts of time, Quetz players will, without a doubt, choose remote locations to nest and occasionally bring them food until they are able to fly. If that happens, it will take away all the danger and increase difficulty curve of Quetzal's growth, making it pointless. Now, this is just the worst case scenario. This is a concept art after all. Nothing tells us precisely that these problems will occur. There's an equal chance that Quetz nests can't be placed in high altitude areas, or some sort of restriction that forces them to nest in regions where they are still in danger. But it is important to point out these potential flaws while the creature is still in development, otherwise the chances of the dev changing anything once it's near completion is extremely small. Making a flyer actually dangerous is a niche that is not yet present in a game, but balancing that specific playstyle is probably one of the hardest ones. But if done well, would certainly increase gameplay diversity and make the game more engaging, since there's one extra danger that will heavily penalize AFK players. But once again, this has to be done right, otherwise it can completely crumble the player-made ecosystem and make a huge portion of the roster extremely unappealing for the majority of people. But what do you guys think? Are you excited to finally play as a Quetz? What do you think about the mysterious cyborg Quetzal? Share your thoughts and opinions down below. If you want to watch previous concept analysis, there will be a playlist available in the end credits. If you are also interested in discussions about the Isle and its future, check out the rest of my content. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel and the content I create. If you want to join the ranks, the link will be in the description. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, join our Discord server for memes and paleo nerd stuff, and I hope to see you next week.